All right, what we'll do, we'll make a start. I think we've just got a couple more out there ready to come in. The rest of us have been here for a little while, some even half an hour ago. So welcome to the STEM Industry Mentoring Program, which is what this is about today. And I'll be covering about the program, what it involves, what are the expectations, what can you expect to get out of this program, and some deadlines and dates and so on that you need to be aware of as well. So I'll explain those in just a moment. My name's Frehse. I'm with Global Leadership and Employability here at the University of Melbourne. We also have in our front row, we've got Carl Brown, who's the Alumni Relations Manager for Science, with his hand up there. We've got Casey, who's the Academic Programs and Enrichment Coordinator from Science. Where is? Right at the back, okay. And we have Edario from Science, who's the Academic Programs and Enrichment Officer at the back there, near the door. So you probably met him on the way in. So they'll be, and all of us will be here to advise, answer any particular questions you might have towards the end of the session. So if you have anything that you really need to ask, that's the time to ask it. In the meantime, what we'll do is go through some slides and just explain a little bit about the program. So today, this is a bit of an overview of today's workshop. It's all about what we call the STEM Industry Mentoring Program. STEM, of course, being science, technology, engineering and mathematics. So we're focusing on that particular group of students. We're going to cover the benefits of mentoring. So what's in it for you, what's in it for the mentor perhaps. It's a two-way thing that you can get value out of. What is mentoring? So just a bit of a definition about what mentoring actually is. Some practical skills for mentoring. So we will have a small activity as we go through the session. Nothing too major, just a small activity. And also the next steps in applying to be in the mentoring program. And any questions, as I said, at the end of the program. So just some background to the STEM Industry Mentoring Program. It's only been running since last year, and we had a very high take-up last year. We had 250 plus pairs that were matched last year, and this year we're looking at around the 300, maybe more than the 300 mark this year. So it has been a very successful program, and you're part of the second year this has been run. It's about having conversations relating to your career and career aspirations, and we'll talk more about that. The idea of this particular program is to meet at least 3 times during semester 2. So that's the minimum requirement for this program, but as I'll mention a bit later on, is that you can actually feel free to extend that time if you need to. Matching will occur in June, so June starts tomorrow, so we're very close to the matching stage. Mentors are alumni members and industry representatives. So the mentors themselves are at different stages of their career. Some will be probably just a little bit out of graduation into a role that they're currently performing. Some will have many years' experience in the industry that they're working in. So they're at different stages of their careers. We tend to match as much as we can on preferences and availability. So it's a two-way thing. Your preferences are going to be matched to the kind of the interests and the expertise of the mentor, but of course it will always be determined by how many mentees want a mentor and the matching of that to occur as well. So that can be an imperfect science. So some obviously will get exactly what they're looking for. And some, as the next dot point indicates, not all applications as a result are going to be successful because of that. Unfortunately, there is only one intake each year, and this is the intake for this year. But it will be on next year if you don't get a mentor allocated to you this time around. So let's have a look at some timelines, and some of the timelines now are fairly critical, and some have even passed, and I'll explain which ones have passed. So now to mid-May. Well, we're at the end of May now. Obviously, we're having a number of briefings, and this has been in a series of different briefings we've had, all being very well attended. So you need to actually register as a mentee, and the program is actually closed. Is everyone aware of that? That the program is actually closed in terms of applying for it. So you should, hopefully the people here today, that's all of you, should have your application in. Is that correct? Yes, all of these, lovely to see heads nodding. So we're going to then spend today looking at the process of mentoring, what it's all about. So we'll be looking at some resources that you can access during the program, and to start considering what skills, what your particular needs are, and what are your goals in terms of what you would like out of the mentoring program. Talked about late June, so matching will be completed at that stage. You will receive an email notification of the matching, and then you are then able to contact your mentor because you'll be given details of your mentor, the name, their background and the industry they're part of. July onwards, mentoring will start, so it'll start in semester 2, and you'll have your first meeting. You can organise your first meeting as soon as you have the contact details. You can then meet your mentor, reflect on what that means, and there'll be a first meeting survey sent to you shortly after that first meeting. Then as we go through the semester, as October comes around, the semester will end. There'll be time to reflect on how that mentoring program has been going for you and to discuss the possibility of continuing the mentoring partnership. So that will be determined by how well you are actually getting along with your mentor. If your mentor is willing to continue the mentoring relationship and as much as you need to want to continue it as well, it's quite possible to continue that on, and you can take that as long as you need to into your career. So the question is really, why should you have a mentor? So it's a big open question. Has anyone been on a mentoring program before, or even been a mentor to somebody else at any stage in their life, either at school or through university? Just a show of hands. So some of you have been exposed to some form of mentoring program in the past. It's not surprising because it is a very popular method and a very good method to develop skills. And so it's no surprising that these programs have been oversubscribed, if you like, and they tend to often get oversubscribed in different areas as well. It's a tremendous opportunity. It provides you with people who can give you exposure to industry, what they're currently doing, what their role is, how did they get into their job, what kind of challenges did they face. They can share that information with you, which makes basically all their wisdom being carried on to you, makes it a little bit easier for you to perhaps navigate your next steps because they've had to deal with challenges and barriers in their own life, which they will no doubt share with you as well, and how they overcame those. So there's lots and lots of different ideas. We will cover a few more as we go through as to why you should have a mentor, but hopefully it's pretty clear to you as that it's a good thing to get involved in. So some of the other benefits to being mentored include these. So it enables you to get a different perspective about yourself and the professional world. So up until now, your perspectives may have been limited to your friends, and maybe colleagues, peers, maybe your family members, and so on. So they will give you certain aspects or perspectives about you and how you behave and so on. You can also develop professional communication skills by having a mentor because you'll get to understand how they communicate within industry. What are the protocols working in a large company, for example? What are the protocols in terms of handshakes? How do they communicate within that organisation? So it gives you some leading skills that you can take forward when you're actually applying for a job and working in a large organisation or a startup or any other organisation for that matter. It also gives you the confidence to network because what can happen during a mentor relationship is that they can take you to a professional association and you can be introduced to people within their network. So if it's a professional association, for example, in finance, you could be invited to one and it gives you a chance to meet other people that they know as well. Helps you set goals. At this stage, you may or may not be very clear on your career goals, and that's absolutely okay if you're not. So you don't have to have your life totally planned step by step, but working through a mentoring relationship might help you reaffirm or readjust what your career goals are. So that can be a good thing too, because that might open you to different types of jobs that you weren't aware of, different job titles that you may not have been aware of. They can introduce you to that and give you some broader understanding of what that means. So resetting goals, in as much as setting goals, is going to be important as well. You'll increase your knowledge of different career paths within that industry as well. You'll get to see what are the promotional prospects, what is a typical day like in that particular industry, so they can talk about that. And that will, in fact, lead on to the next point, which is opening up lots of different possibilities. And we're not sure what those possibilities are, because everyone will have a very different experience in their mentoring relationship. So the possibilities are literally quite endless. I mean, because everyone you speak to after a mentoring program will come out with different outcomes, and some of them will be surprising outcomes which may shift their direction, or it may confirm that they're on the right track in the first place. Also, it will help you to build your professional network. I don't know if you've heard this slogan before, but it's not who you know, it's who knows you. And this statistic comes up time and time again in workshops of this nature, so we tend to think that this is probably some truth in this, even though it's probably not scientifically tested. However, about 70 to 80% of jobs that are actually vacant are not actually advertised on a website or anywhere for that matter. So there's a lot of jobs that are filled through connections, through people you know, through introductions, referrals, and they're the kind of jobs that are available to you which don't get advertised. So by having a mentor, that mentor can help refer you to people within their network that may open doors for you in terms of where the jobs might be. So it does in fact provide a pathway, if you like, to opening up potential jobs that you may not know exist. And I think that's a pretty good thing, because if you're just spending your time on a website, you're not going to access the big bulk of the number of jobs that are potentially available. So I talked about earlier about perspective and how important it is to get some different perspectives about you. So, as it says up here, this is Alice and the Looking Glass, if you're aware of the Alice in Wonderland tale. And you can see that by looking in the mirror, you get some reflections about what's really going on. So a mentor can help you, I guess, give you some honest feedback about what they might see as areas for development or weaknesses that you can't see, or your friends won't tell you about anyway. Because friends and family members like to always generally give you positive feedback, whether it's good or bad. They like to keep you happy. So a mentor is more likely to be realistic and give you more honest feedback. So this feedback that you get can in fact enhance what we call emotional intelligence, and that's the ability to be aware of how you come across and be aware of how people might come across to you. So awareness of emotions and reading facial cues and so on, which are very important in working in industries to understand those kind of things. So they can open up that awareness, and that's going to be critical in your success in your career, to be aware of how you actually come across to others that you may not see. So by getting if you like, a reflection like that, in looking into the glass, you will see some things about yourself that you might think, okay, I think I want to work on that. That's an area I might want to improve on. So you'll get that kind of feedback. So this area is more about the alumni area, which is a massive area at the University of Melbourne. Alumni simply means to nourish. It's a verb, and it basically is a lot of people who have graduated from the university are invited to become part of what we call the alumni, which is past graduate. And by being an alumni member, they're actually committing to nourish the next generation of students and people that are coming out through the university. So not all can do that, but they certainly are more likely to do that. So we do invite mentors from industry to be part of this program. We're not paying them to be part of the program, right? So they're actually volunteers. So they're giving up their time to nurture somebody else. So I think that's a fantastic thing in itself. So we'll talk more about alumni in just a moment, but the numbers are huge, and it gives you access to a really large pool of people who potentially you can contact. And there's the number up there. So you've got over now 375,000 members of the University of Melbourne alumni who are in fact part of now what is a global network. So many of our alumni will be working internationally, of course. They'll be working in all parts of the world across different industries. Some will be in Melbourne, of course, but there'll be a lot international as well. How do you access that particular market is the key, and a mentor can help you get through that door to to get into that big market of alumni members. You can do that through networking. Another key one, which we'll focus on very briefly, but understanding how LinkedIn as a key social media, professional social media tool that you can use to access members of the alumni at University of Melbourne. So just a quick show of hands, who has a LinkedIn profile already? That's great. Yes, me too, yes. So that's fantastic. So a lot of you are already on LinkedIn. Some of you are on LinkedIn but may not know how powerful it is, and I suggest that you work out and try to find out how powerful LinkedIn actually is, because it enables you to connect to people. You can communicate to other members, connections in your connections through the messenger service. You can write articles and post them to your connections for comment. So it's a lot more than just having a static resume on an electronic field. It's actually a very dynamic, interactive tool that you can use. And the University of Melbourne alumni has a presence on LinkedIn. The number is increasing all the time. It's slightly less than the number you see up here, but it is an increasing number on LinkedIn as well. So this question is, what is and what isn't mentoring? So we've talked about hopefully the benefits and the great things you can get from establishing a mentoring relationship. But we need to know what is it that you can get from a mentor and what is it that they probably shouldn't be getting involved in as well. So we'll cover what it is and isn't to get a bit of a clearer picture as to what that might look like. So this definition up here talks about the student actually being proactively seeking that advice. So the onus is always going to be back on you guys to set up the initial meeting and to proactively continue that mentoring relationship. So it's a professional relationship, if you like. It's a structured relationship too, because normally it will involve meetings where you jointly set an action plan or particular goals that you want to achieve at the next meeting. So there's a certain degree of structure in it, but your first meeting will probably be more about getting to know you, getting to know the person. How are you comfortable with each other? Do you find that their advice is relevant to what you're looking for? And so on. So successful mentoring partnerships are built on these sort of values up here. You can see that mutual respect is really important, so that enabling respect for you, and also you need to respect their time and the commitment they've put into the program. It's a professional relationship. It's about openness and also an equal commitment to the relationship as well. So to cover the other side of that is what isn't mentoring. These people are not going to be a side tutor or provide additional academic support for you. So they're not going to do your assignments or sit your exams. I'm sorry, they won't do that. And they won't get involved in intense psychological counselling either. So if you have any really deep issues you want to discuss, it's best that you go to a professional for that, and don't put them all onto your mentor, because they're not going to be qualified or indeed probably too interested in that side of things anyway. They're not there to give you a job as such. So your first meeting is not to rock up and say, oh, where's my job? I'm looking for my job. Okay? So you need to be aware that they can introduce you to people that potentially might open up doors for employment later, but that's not their role initially. It's not a dependent relationship, and what I mean by that is you don't necessarily have to rely on them for everything that you need in your career. That's one resource in a whole range of different people that will help you in your career. There'll be lots of other people, friends, neighbours, people here at the university who are also support for moving on into employability. So it's not a dependent relationship in that sense. And it's not about critiquing or judging what your choices are. So a mentor is more likely to be more open to what your career goals are. Now, in other sessions I've mentioned, that you might have an extremely different career goal. You might say, look, I want to hop on Elon Musk's spaceship and be the first one to land on Mars. That's my goal, basically. And if you said that to a friend or a family member, they might say, oh, come on, let's get realistic. That's just ridiculous. But a mentor is probably going to open up more questions about that and say, okay, if you're really serious about that, what have you planned so far to get involved in that? Have you spoken to Elon Musk yet? Have you got the money to put up front? Can you really think about the consequences if you don't come back and things like that? So they will ask more open questions and not tend to be judging you very quickly on your particular choices. So that's a good thing. Your first meeting is getting to know each other. So really in your first meeting, it's about establishing the relationship, committing to a meeting schedule as well. So once you've met, you'll need to sort of work out when are the best places to meet, what are the best times to meet. So you'll need to work that out together. You can't really dictate to the person what the best times for you are and expect them to have their whole schedule revolving around you. But so it needs to be a negotiated agreement. So on what places to meet, where to meet. Typically what happens though is that meetings are often held in coffee shops. So you can meet in a coffee shop. They might want to come here to the university campus, which is okay as well, or they might invite you to their workplace. Or it could even be, well, we prefer a face-to-face meeting in the first meeting, but other meetings can be done through Skype as well, if you're not available at that particular time. But the face-to-face meetings, you'll probably gain a lot more out of those, if you can. So second meeting can be, for example, it doesn't necessarily have to be, but it can be about preparing. They might, in fact, ask you to bring your resume, your CV, to that meeting for some review from them. So the mentor that you're dealing with has probably had a fair bit of experience in being on interview panels, probably recruited graduates many times. So they're pretty okay about looking at what kind of things need to be in a resume. So they're prepared to be normally another set of eyes that can look over your documents and give you some suggestions about how you might write those up. So that's an example of a goal you might set for your second meeting, but it can be various other suggested activities as well. Then there's the third meeting and then the ongoing meetings. So you're building a relationship during that time. You're also helping to build your own reputation, and mentors can help you in your career. So the reputation are the things that can happen through those small things as well. So a reputation is like a snowball, it builds over time. And a reputation is built by, virtually, if you were to define it in a nutshell, it's about doing what you say you're going to do. So if you're promising to meet somebody, you need to actually be there. And if you can't be there, you need to advise them ahead of time to say why you can't be there and then renegotiate another time. So that's about building your reputation. It's very important, and we'll come to the little quote in just a moment. But reputation is extremely important in any organisation, in business and in your social media sense. So you build a reputation through the things that you do and what other people observe you doing. So it can be little things like that that can destroy a reputation if you don't follow through on the protocols and the procedures about how to deal with somebody if you are going to be late to a meeting, for example. Right, this is the time where we get to do something ourselves here. So all the attention's been on me so far. It's back to you for this small segment. So the question up here is, what are your current career aspirations? It's a big question. We don't expect you to have it all answered at the moment. But for this activity, we'd like you to work with somebody sitting next to you. There are 3 questions up there. In particular, I'd like you to focus on maybe the third question if you can. So what question would you have for a mentor when you're setting up a meeting? So you just imagine you're at a meeting with your mentor and you've just met that person. What are some of the questions you may want to ask your mentor? And just discuss that in your pair exercise and take it in turns. And once you've given an answer to that, swap around, and you can pick another question if you wish to. There's 3 questions up there. We'll spend about probably 3 or 4 minutes. So you only have a couple of minutes each, and then swap over and then talk to the person next to you about your response to that question. Then I'll stop it in about 4 minutes. Everyone clear what we need to do there? Okay, it's over to you. Go. Okay, we'll stop there. You probably need to, you would have probably kept going, but at this stage we need to stop to cover the rest of the session. So thanks for participating in that. Hopefully you are just getting some ideas about what you could ask your mentor, and would anyone here like to relay what they discovered? What would be a good, perhaps, first question or a couple of questions you could ask your mentor? Does anyone like to tell us from that last exercise you did?
Well, we were both kind of looking for guidance in what areas of our career are growing jobs or, yeah.
Okay, ideas from your career and how to grow your job once you're in the job, how to grow within that job, you mean? Or?
Well, kind of like more what areas have increasing numbers of jobs.
Okay, what are the growth prospects in particular fields or different areas? Yeah, that's a good question to ask. So they should be able to point you out from their experience what they know about that, what trends are happening in the industry. So thanks for that. Yeah, were there any others that you came up with? No? We're going to look at a method you could look at when you're asking questions of a mentor, and we're going to have a look at the idea of asking what's called open questions. So we'll come to that in just a moment. So how do you get the most out of mentoring? You need to be open to new ideas as well. So obviously an open parachute is one that flies through the air, right? If it's closed, it goes straight down to the ground and hits the ground hard. So you need to be open to new ideas. You need to remain professional at all times because you are representing the university as well as representing yourself. So your own reputation, but you've also got the university behind you as well. Practice active listening is really important, and that's something we'll come back to in just a sec. So be open to new ideas, accept ideas, and understand if you're not sure what those new ideas are. Remember that you can ask for clarification questions. So what do you mean by that? Can you give us more information? Like, for example, on your question about trends in certain jobs, you may ask them for what other research that backs up that assumption and so on. So you can open up the questions as well through a discussion. So being professional, we did talk about that, and what does it actually mean is the question up here. What do you think being professional does actually mean? We talked about reputation. What about your appearance? Is that important? Okay, and what do you think you should be wearing at your first mentoring meeting? Your best suit, best business attire? No? Sorry? Yeah, okay. So what you need to be is reasonably casual. You don't need to... Normally at this point I ask Carl for his opinion on that. So what's the kind of the best sort of appearance you can have in your first mentoring meeting?
Well, you want to be well presented at the end of the day. You don't have to feel that you need to wear a suit. You don't have to feel that you need to be fully geared up as you would for your first day in your first job or your first work interview. But at the other end of that spectrum, you don't want to be turning up wearing ripped jeans and looking like you're just fallen out of bed. You want to present to them how you would want someone to present to you. I think that's the best advice I can give.
Great, thanks, Carl. So that's what we mean by professional here. So it's a whole package of behaviour and appearance and so on, but you don't need to go overboard on that. So I was sort of joking when I said the suit and the business. You don't actually need all that. Here we've got some attributes, or what we call values, which I guess you need to display as well. So many organisations list values that they aspire to, or what they expect their employees to behave towards. Some of these are represented up here in different forms, different names. So at all times, the behaviours you display will probably need to be in these kind of areas as well. You need to be obviously ethical, have high integrity in what you're doing, promise, as I say, promise to meet you, we will turn up at that particular time, having respect for the person if they're not available at the time you would like them to be, that you're able to accommodate their wishes. So, and obviously that honesty will surround that as well. So you'll develop, of course, these kind of attributes as well. So in a nutshell, professionalism or your reputation is a combination of the behaviour you display, the kind of skills and the competencies that you have in that discussion, and the knowledge you bring to the mentoring relationship as well. So what we often find is that mentors are very interested in finding out what you can do as well, and what information you can provide them, keeping them up to date. So for example, NAB, if you were to join NAB as a graduate, they have what's called an inverse or other upside down kind of mentoring relationship. So they actually expect their new graduates to mentor some senior managers in some aspects of work that they're not familiar with as well. So it can be a two-way thing. They can learn from you in as much as you are learning from them. So that's what we talk about, this level playing field. It can be a valuable relationship for both of you. That's the quote I referred to earlier. It's from Warren Buffett, who is an extremely wealthy person and apparently hasn't actually started a business or made anything or produced anything, but has actually invested in companies that do, like Coca-Cola and snow cream or some ice cream, which are very basic products, but he's made a fortune out of that. And he talks about reputation. He says it's very easy to destroy. It can only take a little thing to do that. So you need to be conscious that reputation keeps building right throughout your career. So active listening is, I did touch on that earlier, but this is what active listening is. It's giving your full attention and it's avoiding judgment. So it's actually listening to the person by asking questions, using open-ended questions, which are typically questions that start with what, how or why. So they open up the discussion, which means you don't normally get a yes or no answer when you ask an open question. Think about that when you ask someone, what did you do? How did you get into your job? They just can't say yes or no. They've actually got to explain how they got there and why are you interested in this particular field, what motivates you in this job. A couple more examples up there for you to look at. So these are the kind of questions you could use as ways to start the mentoring relationship, just asking some open questions and tuning into what they're saying. I think with active listening, it's important to be able to listen to somebody without interrupting, so making sure that you can hear them out and you're not thinking about what you're going to say before they finish what they're saying, because that means you're missing a bit about what they're saying and you've always got this lagging thing about what they're actually saying. You're missing bits and pieces because you're tuning out and thinking about what you're going to ask next. So active listening is a fairly concentrated effort, but it does require a bit of a discussion as well. It can be a two-way thing. So listening isn't just staying silent, it's asking questions, following up as well. We're not going to practice that, but I think it's important that you are aware of your current level of active listening. So if you're talking to somebody after this session, think about how you actively listen to somebody else. Empathy is also an important skill you'll develop during a mentoring process. Empathy is understanding what the other person has been through, and they will normally do the same to you. If you've had some challenges or some difficulties that you've had to face, you can certainly discuss those. And empathy is putting yourself in their shoes. It's a bit different to sympathy. Sympathy is more about feeling sorry for somebody, but we want to develop more about empathy, understanding what it's like. So expect those kind of deep discussions. I think you don't know how far they're going to go, but if they're vulnerable and open to talking about their experiences, no doubt there will be, on both sides, there will be overcoming difficulties in your life or in your jobs or university, which you may want to discuss as part of the conversation. So let's have a look at an example of an introduction email that you might send your mentor. Have a read through that, and I want you to tell me if that's the kind of email you'd like to send to your mentor. So good email? No? Okay. So a lot of heads nodding. So why wouldn't you send something like that? What are some of the reasons why? Sorry, who was that? It's informal. Too informal? Yeah. Okay, so how would you change it? Capitalize the hey or sure. Right. Right. Okay, good point. So maybe it's a little bit too casual for a first introduction. All right. Anything else in there that you've noticed about that? The ending. What's about what it's about? Bye. Just bye. Yeah, it's like a telephone conversation. Yeah. All right. So bye. It's okay. All right. So let's have a look at another one, and hopefully you'll see some major differences between this one and one you might use. So have a look at this one. Have a read through that quickly. So would you rather choose this one? Show of hands. Right. So why? Why this one is distinct from the last one? Any reasons? Yes. Yes. Showing respect for the other person by trying to negotiate when the time suits both. Yes, absolutely. So it's showing more respect for the person, taking into account they're busy and working at a mutually suitable time. So open question there, when might that suit you, instead of this is the time I want to see you. So that's a good one, yeah. Anything else in that email? More, yes, the contact details at the end, you can see that the person's full name is there this time, and they have their email address and their mobile number, so they can be contacted, as I said before, if they need to contact you just prior to attending a meeting because something's happened along the way and they can't make it, they can contact you or text you by your mobile. So this is an example of what we'd like to see. It doesn't have to be exactly the word for word what we've got up here. You need to customise it to your own particular situation. But think about the main points we have in here, that having your name, contact details, having respect for mutually negotiating a good time, giving a bit more introduction to yourself and why you'd like to arrange the meeting is important in the first paragraph, and giving some information about what you're studying helps set the tone, so it helps them prepare for the meeting as well when they know a little bit more about you. So that's great. So yeah, make sure you try and use something similar to this one. So you're in this mentoring program. What are you actually committing to? Well, first of all, you're an ambassador. And I did mention that many times in different ways. But as an ambassador, you do represent the university and your own reputation. So you are responsible for the relationship, so you need to make sure it continues. Meet for at least those 3 meetings. And the mentoring team here will be looking for some feedback as you go through that process as well. So there's a lot of support here to help you. If you think they're not happening properly or they're going off the rails, and I'll give you some information on how you can contact the team that can provide some support in this area. So you need to get it going from July to November during semester 2, using the mentoring platform, which I'll explain a bit more in just a moment, completing some tasks and surveys that will be sent to you from time to time, just so that we're aware of the feedback we're getting, so we can pass on that feedback into the next group of mentees, and also to our mentors as well if we need to. And it also keeps the staff here at the university up to date with what you're actually doing as well. So you're committing to something that is not going to take a lot of time, but it means you need to be responsible for these things to happen. So it's not going to take many extra hours during your semester while you're studying and so on. In fact, it's the time it takes and the investment you get out of it is going to be exponential compared to the actual time you put into it. However, we don't want to see this becoming a ghost mentee. In other words, disappearing, hiding in the cupboard, putting sheets over your head. Don't want that sort of thing to happen, because that means the mentoring relationship is just dissolved and it's not going anywhere. If you're getting along well and you think it's really important, continue it, make the contact and see if you can go past the 3 meetings as well. So, the one-stop shop for mentoring, most of you would have seen this site because you had to go in here initially anyway. mentoring.unimel.edu.au is really your one-stop shop for mentoring. There is a STEM mentoring page in there as well, which would have guided you here today. So there are program guidelines in there. There's space for you to create a profile with your photograph. So that's really important as well. So nothing worse to be in a coffee shop and not know who you're dealing with. So if you've got a photograph of the person, it's important they can recognise you. Once you have the details of your mentor as well, you can also look them up on LinkedIn as well. So most LinkedIn profiles or all-star profiles have a photograph in there, so you can get to see their photo as well. You can find out more about your mentor in there by some of their background, what skills they have, what's the job title, what industry are they working in. And you can also use that to complete some surveys and tasks. So that's really your one-stop shop for mentoring. So the matching information is listed here. By now you've you've completed your application, so I probably don't need to labour too long on this aspect, but there's a bit of information we've requested from you to make the matching as more seamless as possible, to try and get the closest possible match. And you would have asked the question why you'd want to apply for the program, so hopefully you've all done that perfectly well. This is just an example of what the mentors page will look like. So this is the example of some brief information, what their current job is. In this case, they're a scientist with CSIRO, Jenny Roberts, and just giving some background information. That'll help you form the email as well in the first communication you have with them. So you can put in there you can keep articles, questions, list down some answers. It's a fairly interactive sort of page, and you can use that to your advantage right throughout the process. Here there'll be some tasks to complete and some deadlines to complete them, so that'll keep you on track. So just make sure you keep looking into that and making sure that you've got those sort of things completed when requested. So the next steps for you is really, I guess, the matching process, which you'll hear about now at the end of June. Then you'll receive your mentor's profile. Getting in touch with your mentor happens around July then, probably in the beginning of July, your first meeting, then the semester will end towards the end of October, and then you can decide whether you continue that mentoring relationship. And it's got to be a mutual thing. So these are some important contacts. If you're having any issues through the program at all, this is the first port of call. So we've got an email which is stem-mentoring@unimelb.edu.au, and you've got a phone number there as well. If you can't get through on that, you can also put a call through, and there will be someone there, or at least a voicemail to collect your question. And I'm sure they'll get back to you fairly quickly. I won't put a time frame, but it'll be quickly. And then you've got a website there as well that you can also look out for. So these are some contacts. You can use these as you're going through the mentoring program. As I said, if you're having any difficulties or challenges that you're not sure how to deal with, these are the first areas you should probably contact, and there'll be support available for how you might tackle or deal with any particular issues you have. So there's a lot of support for you. You're not entirely on your own. In some cases you can get mentors outside a structured program like this, and it's entirely up to you then what you do. But we've got professional staff here that can help you get through some particular issues or any difficulties or challenges you might be having, because they're very experienced in dealing with that. So at this point in time, we'll open it up to any other questions you might have, and we'll have our other staff here in the front row who can certainly ask or answer specific questions you might have about the program. So now's a good time for that. If you'd like to start off with any questions, happy to take them, and we'll direct them to the right people. Yes, here we are. These are the people that were hiding at the back and in the front. They're all out in the front now, so there we go. Are there any questions?
If we don't get matched this time, do we have to apply again next year, or are we already in the system?
You will, if you want to try again for this program and you don't get matched this year, you will need to reapply that next year. What I will say is that we will do whatever we can to match as many of the applicants as we possibly can this year, so don't automatically think you're not in with a great chance. You are certainly in a good chance of being matched this year. We have had an amazing number of applications this year, so we're trying to make sure that we can recruit as many mentors as possible to support all of you. What I would also just mention is that there will be another pan-university mentoring program which will be launching later this year. So if for any reason any of you can't be matched, and we will, throughout the course of the first month or so after matching, if we find people are dropping out for whatever reason, we'll try and get in contact with others to try and rematch mentors, so that it's not just a one-time thing and stop. But if you don't get in to this program, there is another mentoring program which is more of a light touch program. So essentially there will be mentors who sign up, and you can go in and just identify a mentor that you want to put a question to, or you maybe want to have just a one-off meeting with. It's not designed as this program to be a kind of a longer-term connection. So there are other options that will be coming online as well, just to support those who maybe don't get matched.
Having done it 1 year, what did you learn from last
help with us, all of the others. We certainly learned that this session is really important, which is why this year we've made it clear that we need as many students as possible to come to a training session, because the more you understand about what your expectations are, what you should be trying to get out of this, and the sorts of things that you need to be thinking about for yourself before you actually go and meet your mentor, the more you are likely to be able to engage properly with your mentor and get the most out of the experience. What we found last year was there were people who signed up, and then they signed up because they thought it would be a good idea at the time, but then actually kind of, as Warren's slide suggested, kind of ghosted and didn't turn up. So we had a lot of mentors calling us going, where are these people? What's happening? I'm giving up their time. So I just want to again impress upon you, if we do match you with a mentor, do what you can to make the most out of this. This is a great opportunity for you, and it's really important that you approach that for yourself, kind of to get the most out of it, but also recognizing the fact that these are people who have careers and are giving up their time to support you. So that was definitely one of the big outcomes. We'll obviously make sure that the training for mentors gives them as much support as possible, because not everyone is a trained mentor. These are people who maybe like parents or family members that are out there just doing their job and are looking to try and help the next generation of recruits. So we do quite a lot with them they have a similar sort of training session as this, which will happen next month, to actually help them make sure that they can support you as well.
Hi, thank you for arranging this. My first question is, what is the most appropriate way to get contact for the first time with a manager, for example, by email or email and phone? And the second question is, should I assume that the manager can see my profile on that startup?
Great questions. Yes, so we focused on email here, and I would say that that's probably the best first contact, because it gives you a chance to think about what you're going to say. You might be nervous about contacting someone that you've never met or that you don't really know so much about. So I would say email is probably the first line of communication. And in terms of what's shared, both you and your mentor will see a slightly narrowed down version of your profile. So they won't see every single bit of information that you've given to us. We request that so that we can help to match you properly. But they will see your contact details that you've listed. They'll see your introduction paragraph that you've written. They'll see the sorts of subject areas that you're studying and the sorts of career areas that you're looking to get into. All the things that help them to get a bit of a sense of who you are and what you're looking to get out of this, but they won't see every single thing. And if anyone has any concerns about, oh, maybe I put all my contact details in and I don't want them to contact me on my home phone, I won't even want them to contact me on my mobile or whatever, now that all of the applications have been assessed, you can log into the system and update any of the details if you feel like maybe you want to put more into your introduction or you want to take a contact detail out or anything like that, you can do that.
And I would suggest that if you have sent an email and haven't had a response, calling them is fine after that, just to remind them that you want to get in touch with them.
What advice would you give to get the most out of this opportunity that we have with our mentors?
I think you should try to think between now and when you're matched about what you're looking to do in your career. As Warren said, some people will have really strong ideas. I want to do this and I want to do only this. Some people will go, I have no idea what I want to do when I get out of my course. But both of those are perfectly valid thoughts and feelings at this time in your student life. So I would say be really reflecting on what you think you're good at, what you think maybe are things that you should try and improve about your professional skills. Be thinking about what might help you to get into your chosen industry field and how you might ask those questions. I'm not an expert in every scientific career field, and there are billions of them. So it's really about thinking what you're enjoying right now, what you think really is your passion, and then using those kind of concepts to talk to your mentor. They can reflect back on you with things that they've experienced and say, well, if you're a really personable individual and you're really interested in, can't think of an example, but they will be able to listen to what you're saying and say, well, with the skills that you have, with the traits that you're exhibiting, with the interests that you have, this might be an option for you. They may be able to open your eyes to job or a career area that you hadn't even thought of. So go into this as an open person, not be kind of thinking, I want to do this and only this, and I will only listen to advice about that. Be conscious that they can give you advice not just about your career as well. They can give you general professional advice to help you with writing a better CV, or how to get over nerves when going into interview, or lots of different things. So really be thinking about what can someone who's gone through a number potentially of different roles in their career, what can they be telling you? What are the things that you really want to learn in order to be as prepared as possible when you go out to start applying for jobs?
Yeah. Are we supposed to talk about like target companies during the mentoring program?
Absolutely can. The individuals, we won't necessarily be able to match you with an individual from the organisation that you're desperately trying to go to. But there's nothing to say, just because they work for one company, you can't say, well, I've looked at this company, or I've looked at these number of companies. Do you know anything about that? Do you know people who work there? Do you think that they would be the right organisation for what I'm looking to do? Or do you know something that maybe I should be aware of? You can certainly do that.
I know, but actually my question is, let's take finance as an example. Supposing that my mentor is from Commonwealth Bank, am I supposed to say something like, oh, I'm really interested in the NAV graduate program? That's the question.
I would say there is nothing wrong with saying that. Obviously, you don't want to say anything that would criticise the place that they're working for, because they might take that personally. But they are realistic about the fact that there are other companies out there. We know there are hundreds of other universities out there, but that doesn't stop us saying that we're the only one here. So don't be afraid to say, I've heard that NAB have a fantastic internship program, or I've heard that Commonwealth is a really great organisation and they've been ranked higher than another organisation. But just be mindful, obviously. I get the point of your question about you don't want to offend them. So be mindful of that, but they are professionals. They know that you will be applying to different institutions and all sorts of things like that.
Kind of sensitive, but not that sensitive.
Exactly.
Yeah. They're representing themselves, they're not there representing their company.
What should we do if we get matched to a mentor having a completely different industry as to what we are studying currently?
Sure, so we try wherever possible to not make that happen, but we are obviously realistic about the fact that there are only a finite number of mentors who sign up each year, and we may not be able to match you. So we use the career areas that you've listed as your interests, and also the career areas that they say that they have experience in, and try to be as direct as possible with those. But kind of going back to a point that I made earlier, I would say if you get matched with someone who maybe isn't quite in the exact industry area that you're looking for, if we say you want to get into finance, we probably wouldn't try and match you with someone who's working in the chemistry field. That would potentially be a little bit outside of the realms. But again, trying to be open to the idea that just because they don't actually work in exactly the niche field that you're thinking of, that doesn't mean that they can't give you any useful advice. So we have had examples where people have called up in last year's program and said, I've been matched with someone, I just don't think they're quite right for me. My advice is always at least have the very first meeting with them. Don't write it off straight away. If you really find that, and they will be honest, if they don't feel that they can help you, they will say that. They won't try to fumble around in the dark, because neither of you are going to benefit from that. So if you really do find, after meeting with them, talking to them, that this just isn't the right match, get in touch with us. The contact details will be in everything that we ever send you from now on, so don't worry about if you didn't write it down just then. But get in touch with us, and we'll do what we can to potentially find you an alternative mentor, or see whether we can find someone from our industry partners within the faculties as well. We've done that in the past. We can't do that for a huge number of people, but we did for a very small number of people last year. So we'll do whatever we can to make sure that you get the experience that you deserve after this, essentially.
Can we apply for multiple mentoring programs?
Last year we made sure that the programs that were starting at the same time, you can end up being matched in multiples unless there was, I know, a kind of a significant number of mentors and could have a capacity for that. This year, a lot of the mentoring programs are in different stages of commencement. So if you've applied for another program already and you've applied for this one, that won't stand against you, essentially. We will try and match you as best we can.
No more questions? Okay, well, thanks again for coming, and best wishes with the journey that you take through the mentoring program. I'm sure you'll get a lot out of it, and it'll be something you'll really remember as part of your university experience. If you haven't scanned your student card, please come out the front and I'll scan that for you before you leave. Thanks again.